Hi, I'm adventure journalist Jamie Moy, and this is the Core Outdoors Speaker Series. Once a month, Core offers this free online webinar to inspire and to share valuable information in the outdoor rec tech space. Today, you'll be hearing from Gavin Fernie-Jones, the co-founder of Reaction Collective in the UK. Gavin will break down how his organization helps member businesses across the globe to build a greener outdoors industry. Joining him are co-founder Heather Davies, an expert in business sustainability management, and a carbon literacy for marketing professionals. Also, Rebecca Evans, an outdoor apparel designer and the founder of Utilifolk, a micro brand creating unique garments using remnant and discarded textiles. I also saw that Ellie jumped in as well from Reaction Collective. Welcome, all of you. I'm thrilled to have you on the speaker series today and so interested in what you have to share with us. I'm going to turn it over to Gavin, but first, just a reminder, feel free to ask questions at any point during the presentation. Just type them into the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat and can pose your questions to the speakers as they come in. All right, Gavin, the floor is yours. Go ahead and share your screen.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I'll echo that. If people have got questions, please fire away, because we are a collective and we like to share and we like to bounce ideas around. So yeah, please drop them in the chat and we'll try to answer them. Hopefully you can see my screen, which I'm just about to make a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it looks great.
Well, what I'm going to do, just to start off with, I'm just going to tell you our story, really, how we started Reaction and why we started it. It began with an event, actually, just a repair day. So I live in the French Alps in a little ski resort called Courchevel. Well, it's actually a very big ski resort, but a little town on the edge of Courchevel. And I actually owned, for the last 10 years, 2 ski shops in the town of Courchevel and the town of Maribor. They were boot fitting shops, and actually my boot fitting career started in Banff. So I went to Canada to do a winter season about 11 years ago. I actually started boot fitting in Banff. Whilst I was there, boot fitting realised there was a space to build a boot fitters in our valley, so returned and set up a business. I ran that business for 10 years. And about 5 years into that journey, we started to address the environmental impact of that business. So we managed to work with some suppliers to remove single-use plastic. We switched our energy to renewable energy. We did a lot of training with our staff to make sure we serviced and repaired and cleaned products rather than just selling someone a new one. And then 4 years ago, from about now, well, just in the middle of the season, we decided to hold what we called a fix-it event outside the shop. So we got a few of our friends to turn up with their sewing machines, and we asked people to bring in their gear on the day, and we just fix it for free. Very, very similar to the worn wear stuff. And about 2 weeks before the event, I asked my friends if they would bring in their secondhand ski gear, which we would resell and get it back out in the community, but use the funds to plant as many trees as possible. So we did that event, and we raised €9,000 on the day from selling secondhand clothing. That had that did 2 things to me, really. It made me realize that my community cared about what happened to their clothing and cared about the environment and wanted to engage in projects such as tree planting. But secondly, it also made me realize just how much kit we've all got. I had mates turning up with 6 ski pants to donate, knowing full well that they had 2 or 3 more pairs at home. So off the back of that, we set up an organisation. It's a French association, which is very similar to a CIC in the UK or a not-for-profit. And it's a community-focused organisation. The name is One Tree at a Time. And this is a picture of our community hub. So we've created this community hub where we teach repair, we turn donated products into other garments. So we've got a big project at the moment where we're taking ex-uniforms and we're recreating sleeping bags and jackets for people that are living on the streets. And we've actually managed to self-fund this place. So we get donated lots and lots of uniforms, like ski instructor uniforms. We get lots of chalet company uniforms. And all of these uniforms have got some branding on. And the companies don't want that uniform to go back out on the slopes with their branding. So what we do is we clean them up, we re-waterproof them, we service them, and then we actually patch over the logos. and resell them in our community, which it's been really good. That act on its own has sort of self-funded this community hub. We do all sorts of other stuff in there. We'll teach bike servicing. We've got a projector so we can do film nights, and it's been going really well. So that's been going for 3 years now. We've got employees. It's a really vibrant space. And I was speaking on a podcast episode about the circular economy. And the host, Catherine Wheatman, asked me at the end, when we'd finished the conversation, she said, like, how can you scale this? And I still had my 2 ski shops at that time, and I was actually trying to sell those ski shops so that I could go to do something different. And I didn't want to step into that world of opening more and more shop spaces, because even just running a community hub like this it's quite time consuming. I've got two young children, so for that reason I didn't want to open up loads more spaces. We have actually gone on to open up one more, which is a collaboration further up the valley, and that one is really big. It's about 1,000 square meters space, where we've got woodwork and metalwork workshops. We've got a cafe. We do all the outerwear, and there's furniture and all sorts in there. So, and the other reason I didn't really want to open lots and lots of one tree at a time spaces is this space has really been shaped by our community and for our community. So a lot of the services that we run from there will only work on our high street. We didn't want to just take that and try and replicate it elsewhere. We wanted to see if we could create something where people could get into the same space, share ideas, collaborate, and see if they could build something in their own community. So we started Reaction. Oh, I forgot about this. So these are some of the patched uniforms that we've got. And I'm just going to talk here a little bit about a hyper-local brand. So when we patch over our uniforms, we actually give them a stamp. And that has created this sort of brand in our local community that people want to be part of. Like, people recognize its story, they recognize its impact. And I can go skiing on a day now, and I can see sometimes 10 of our jackets out on the slopes. So it's become this sort of celebrated local brand. This is Stu here. He's been working for 6 months, and before that couldn't sew, but he's taught himself to sew. We've put him on a few courses, and he's actually been the guy that's been leading on this project to turn outerwear into streetwear. You can see that bottom left. And so then we formed the Reaction Collective. So we started 18 months ago. And at the time we knew of 5 other organizations that were similar to One Tree at a Time. They were slightly different. Like, there was another space that was very similar called Montagne Vert in Morzine. But there's also a peer-to-peer rental platform that we knew, the clothing and outerwear rental platform. A couple of repair services. And so we brought them into the same space to see if we could start to create a little community. Fast forward now like 18 months, and we've got over 40 organizations come into the space, and that's straight from New Zealand and over to the Kootenays now. Heather, I thought you might like to speak a little bit about what we're trying to do, if you want to jump in on this bit.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a manifesto, and it's basically all about the idea of rescuing products that would otherwise be going to landfill, rescuing those in different ways, from like companies sometimes, or from individuals, collecting them and then reviving them. And our members do that in all sorts of different ways, depending on their specialities. We've got people who are amazing at repair. We've got organizations that have become experts in rebranding, so de-branding and rebranding items and reselling them, repurposing them, so turning them into something completely different, but something that's useful, and normally something that's geared towards the outdoor community. And then there's all sorts of redistribution models. So resale's an obvious one, but we've also got rental platforms, and some of those are peer-to-peer rental platforms. So where somebody who has a tent in their garage but perhaps only uses it a couple of times a year could rent out that tent to somebody who doesn't have a tent and wants to go camping. And there's a couple of organisations like that. There's also organisations that donate items to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them. So in the UK, that looks like refugee charities. It looks like underprivileged children's kind of sports clubs, but also people who are on low income who want to participate in things like the guiding and scout movement, or the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is an award for adolescents wanting to get outdoors. And then a lot of the profits that are made are then used to help regenerate the outdoors. So One Tree at a Time, for example, the idea is behind the name, isn't it? One Tree at a Time started out by planting trees with the profits that they made. So it's really exciting, and I think, you know, everything we do is sort of based on the circular economy, and the kind of one of the benefits that we realized of doing that is that we can. Oh, I think I can hear some feedback. Ellie, I think you might need to mute yourself. Sorry. One of the benefits of that is that by keeping gear in circulation, and by selling it secondhand or by donating it, things like that, we're actually making the outdoors more affordable for people and more accessible to people who really wouldn't have been able to afford it in the first place. So that's really exciting. So we haven't practiced this. So was that what you
Yeah, no,
wanted
that's
me
really
to
good. Yeah, that's really good. Just trying to move on another screen now. Why does that stop doing that?
If you just click towards the right of the screen, it should do it.
Oh yeah, I wasn't doing that before. I was pressing the button. Yeah, so we've got quite a few different organisations in the collective, as Heather described them. They're from across sort of different circular models. I mean, our main aim is to keep, well, we started off, our main aim is to keep as much outdoor gear and gear as possible out of landfill. But as we've grown and expanded, we've realised that creating a network and creating a community is as important, and creating a change in how people use their outdoor gear and how they access the outdoors is something that we're able to do by looking after the kit that is already in action. I mean, one of the reasons for me wanting to do this, and well, there's several reasons for me wanting to do this and getting into this, is one, the French Alps the temperature here has already risen by over 2 degrees. So it's quite noticeable in this region that climate change is having quite an impact. We obviously got the postcard pictures of the Mer de Glace in Chamonix and other glaciers like that, which are quite hard to see actually. Like I was over there the other day with Ellie, and the last time I was there was 10 years ago, and the change is phenomenal. That glacier has actually receded in length by 2.5 kilometers in the last century, and by a depth of 120 meters. So it's like, when you look at the postcards and pictures from before, and even from when I was there 10 years ago, if you look at it now, it's a really different space. We also, my ski shop was based at an altitude of 1650, and in the 20 years that I've been based in this resort, it's started to rain a lot more at that altitude. We often get a storm come through now, and it'll start with snow, and as the second front comes through, it turns to rain. And then a couple of summers ago, just over there, we had a forest fire. So we've kind of got a lot of signals in our community here. There's also a big collapse in the biodiversity. The forests are really struggling. So yeah, it's just that kind of led to me wanting to do something. But also, I've had a seat at the table watching the amount of waste that is coming through our space. So the shop that I ran for 10 years, the amount of plastic and cardboard and single-use waste we had was phenomenal. But then also the amount of products people would leave behind. Like, you know, if we fitted a ski boot, they would leave their old ski boots, and they'd leave their skis if they'd bought another ski. So we started to that just started to really play on my mind and was the sort of catalyst for me to do this. But since I've been doing that, I've got to see the problem even more. A couple of weeks ago, we went down to the big clothing sorting centre down the valley here from us, and this region doesn't have a big city in it. It has a couple of largest towns, but they're not huge. And that clothing centre on the day that I was down there processed 44 tons of clothing. We had a good chat with the people working down, and they showed us around, and there was a large amount of that clothing that was in fact brand new and had tags on. So there's this huge issue with the amount of waste that we're generating, and when we see it delivered to our shop space and we see it in our community, there's definitely a way to keep that product there. Now, the standard for like a shop where you donate clothing to, so our community hubs works by people and brands and organizations donating us clothing, and we work with our team to keep it in the community. The industry standard for that process, so if you drop it into a charity store in the UK, for example, is that 15 to 20% of the donated clothing will remain inside that shop. The rest will be exported. In Europe, it's predominantly exported to Africa, to places like Ghana. So that clothing can actually travel about 6,000 kilometers after it's been disposed of. Much of it is arriving and is completely unusable. There's not much need for a ski jacket and ski trousers in Ghana. When I was down at that centre where they were working for this waste clothing, and I'm chatting to them, I'm saying like, what happens to all the ski gear? And they're like, all that ski gear gets exported, so it doesn't even get like checked to see if it can be used. What we do in our space is we use a lot of creativity and local skills to turn that product into something that is unique and a one-off. And what that does is it means that we have a rate of around about 75 to 80% of the materials that dropped off in our space remain here. Like we'll even, if we get a garment that's got a slight stain, we might patch over it with a piece of artwork, or we might cut other parts of the fabric out to use them on another jacket. We might reuse the zips. So we're really good at trying to keep everything as local as possible. Which brings me on to repurposing. We've got Rebecca with us, who's running the organisation called Utilifolk. Rebecca's actually a designer by trade as well, so it'd be really good to hear a little about Utilifolk, Rebecca, but also to hear a little bit about your thoughts on design and outerwear.
Okay, okay. I guess so. Utilifolk is, I call it a micro brand because it's just me on my own. I don't have any employees or anything, but it started because, well, actually the first thing was I bought a vintage piece of like a vintage gilet from a brand called Rohan, who's actually a brand I used to work for. So, but this was a gilet that was from before my time, and I bought it secondhand, and I thought it was really cool, but I tried it on and it didn't look right, and I thought I can make this into something that I want to wear. And then I started doing that a little bit more, like finding other bits of other garments that were a bit dated, and kind of repurposing those, like changing the fit a little bit, and it kind of, and I got a lot of joy out of it, to be honest. It was kind of sort of the tail end of a lockdown period where freelance work, so I'm a freelance designer by trade, was a bit quiet, so it kind of gave me something to focus on, and I just kind of like started doing it organically. There's a shop local to me where that is run by a friend, and she was like, well, you're welcome to sell stuff in here if you want. So I make stuff in my studio where I am now, and I take it down to the local shop and I sell it to local people. And the things that I try to repurpose are I get sort of like military stuff, which I quite like, and I do a lot of shirts, and I am now trying to focus a lot more on outdoor gear because that's where my design roots are. So I've been an outdoor clothing designer for like 20 years. So I know all about the technical fabrics, I know about the benefits of them, some of the problems. And I think I kind of have, as Utilifolk has kind of evolved, I realized that I can make some really nice garments that take advantage of some of those technical fabrics that have been used and for which there is no end of life solution. So a lot of technical fabrics are obviously blends which cannot be recycled, and even when something can theoretically be recycled as a textile, there's no infrastructure in this country to actually make that happen at any scale. So I try to take some of those outdoor kind of garments that if they don't get worn, if someone isn't going to buy it and wear it as it is, then it needs to be transformed into something else. So yeah, that's kind of what Utilifolk does. But kind of, I guess, in terms of how that changes my view on design, I've been in the outdoor industry for an awful long time, and I think the quantity of stuff that is produced and the way that it is kind of aimed at specific activities, like I was quite, I wouldn't say brainwashed by it, but I'm the sort of person that, like, oh, if it looks like I cannot possibly go out into the outdoors if it looks like rain without a waterproof in my bag. Yeah, oh, if I'm wearing trousers that are like a cotton, then, and if they get wet, then I'm going to get cold. And I've been had that all those kind of those points which the outdoor companies use as selling points for their gear, which are, like this garment will dry really quickly, so it's really great to use if you're out to be in inclement weather. They all make total sense, but also you don't absolutely have to have a different pair of leggings for every different type of activity that you do. And it's kind of opened my eyes to that, and that a lot of these fabrics are very similar. And that, yeah, you can do a lot of things. Most people are generalists. Most people do a lot of different outdoor activities, and you can wear exactly the same kit for all of those, with the exception of people who are scaling, huge mountains and are experts in their field. And I have designed kit for people who are experts and who are professionals, and I've designed kit for people who are generally just going to be walking their dog. And I understand that the kind of necessity for the details and the highly technical spec of those high level products, but for most people on the street and most people around, like, something quite general is fine. And I think what I'm trying to do with Utilifolk is maybe take some of those things and go, well, maybe you want these hiking shorts which have got holes in them, why not hike in a skirt? I'll make these shorts into a skirt. You've still got the great pockets, you've still got the quick dry fabric. And I like to quote my husband, actually, because he said something. He does various kind of outdoor activities. He's really into his biking, but he is not a lycra person. He does a lot of, I think over in the States they call it gravel biking. There's not so much gravel in the UK, but it's kind of like all terrain, not serious downhill, but kind of off-road. And he said, I shouldn't have to wear someone else's clothes to do my sport. And that really, really resonated with me, that you should be able to go out and do an activity and feel like yourself in the clothes that you're wearing and feel comfortable in those. And there's no reason why those clothes have to fit a particular aesthetic all the time to be acceptable for you to wear it, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I guess as an antidote to what I do as a freelance designer, designing a lot for different brands and companies and gearing stuff towards their design language and what they have dictated these clothes need to look like, and often they all look the same, is with Utilifolk, it's kind of taking some of those garments which are no longer wanted or used or are out of date in terms of their aesthetic, and creating something with a different appeal and maybe just like a different look. But I should also say that not everything I do is outdoor gear. I've just reworked some tablecloths into kimono jackets. But I do consider that a kimono is a very utility garment, in that it uses fabric very efficiently and is very comfortable to wear. So yeah. Is there anything else, Gavin, that you wanted me to talk about?
Yeah, well, what I was going to say on that is sort of our ethos behind Reaction is to get everyone in the same room, in the same space, to try and get Becky and people in. Like, Becky is by trade a designer, I was doing a little bit of reworking, but it's just to try and get everyone together and to learn from each other. And we know at the minute, like there's quite a few organisations in the collective that are doing some work around repurposing. We'll all be very frank about that work at the minute and know that it is extremely hard to make that financially viable. It's very, very difficult at this time. But what we're kind of hoping is if we're in that space and we're trying ideas and Becky's testing stuff and somebody else is trying something and something is bouncing off of each person, that hopefully something starts to emerge that starts to give us some actual kind of real solutions to this end of life product. Because same here in France, like there is no facilities to deal with that. Like as you say, this isn't available and it gets shipped abroad. So although we're not going to play it up too much, it is quite difficult to repurpose a garment and to resell it. But the actual act of trying to do it and trying to work in that direction is bringing up a lot of new things and not a lot of new ideas.
I also think that the fact that I really enjoy it is a big driver. I enjoy it, and people have said to me, "Oh, have you thought about selling your stuff in other places, in other stores?" And I'm like, "Well, I can't make enough to populate more than my local shop." And also I like the fact that I live in, a particular area, and the things that I make are sold into that area. And, okay, sometimes it's people who don't live here, but most of the time it's people who are here or visiting friends. And I really like that. No.
And I kind of think like that for the moment, that's how the reworking and the repurposing of products is going to have to be created. It's going to have to be created like a network where you're like, we are here creating something that's for our community. I think like to scale it is currently very, very difficult, but it's good fun. As you said, it's very enjoyable. Amongst the collective as well, we've got some independent repairers. I'm really sorry, but I forgot and I can't see on the screen the guy's name that was on here earlier, who sounds like he knows way more about repair than us. But these are smaller repairers, so a lot of one man or one woman teams. Again, the idea is to try and connect them and bring them into a collective space so that we can share knowledge, we can share customers, we can help each other out. One thing that the repair teams struggle with, and one thing that they're working towards, is actually having access to the materials that they need to carry out the repairs. So struggling with access to the exact zips and fabrics and things like that. So as we're coming together as more of a collective, we're having a little bit more of a say, and we can come together and try and persuade brands to give us access to that stuff. Also within the collective, we've got some peer-to-peer rental schemes. So this is a scheme called Tent Share that's run by another Rebecca. And Rebecca started this business out a few years when she was actually looking to rent a tent and found out there was no platform for this. And what you do on Tent Share is you list your own tent. So I could list my tent on there, and someone coming from anywhere in the world could rent that tent off me. I have a tent. It's downstairs in my cellar for 51 weeks of the year. And so this is the idea of trying to get some more use from them products. She's also been partnering up with festivals in the UK. We have some big problems with waste tents at festivals in the UK. There's a culture of leaving your tent behind. In fact, each year about 250,000 tents are left behind at the end of festivals. And so what they're trying to do is they are partnering with festivals and offering people a rental option so that those tents can get reused again. Also in the collective, we've got resale. So we've got an outdoor shop in the Peak District that we've been working with called Outside. We want to try and help existing businesses introduce more circular models to their spaces. So Outside got in touch with us and said, like, what ideas do we have, or what could we introduce into their space? And over a few meetings, we talked about all the secondhand gear that we've been selling, and said, look, I think you can start a secondhand rail. And they actually wanted the Reaction logo to be part of that rail, so there was a backstory to the work that they were doing. So they introduced a secondhand rail into their space, and within the first 5 or 6 months, they'd sold about 8 or 9 grand's worth of secondhand gear, which half of the profits from that they gave to a homeless charity in Sheffield, and another half went into regenerating the moorlands. We also have redistribution places, which Heather did mention earlier. There's a lovely one. I'll put one tree at a time on this slide, but I will talk about Kit Squad. Kit Squad is based in the UK. It's run by Fran. Fran is of low income because she's got a disabled child, so she's not able to work full time. And Fran recognised, especially during COVID, how important being in the outdoors was to her. And she actually received a list for her child of the kit she would need to go on a school event. And the school event list was like the jacket, the rucksack, the shoes, everything else, the tent, came to over 500 quid. But because she'd spent a lot of time in the outdoors, she already had all this stuff. She knew she could source it secondhand, and she was able to go on that trip. But for a lot of people, if they're not from an outdoor background, that might be really off-putting. So what people do is they contact Fran, prove to Fran that they're on low income. So this is people in the UK that are on benefits of low income, prove to Fran. She then sources their shopping list. So it might be like they want a tent so they can go camping and be sleeping back. And she's got a big connection with lots of brands and different organizations to redistribute that stuff. Rebranding, which we talked about, but I'll go on about Michael. So Pre-Love Sports is another organization.
Hey, Gavin, I'm going to jump in here.
We run out of time already.
No, you're great. Just
Okay,
that we had a great question come up that I
Yeah.
thought was timely and didn't want to move past it, kind of on that branding issue. So Russell was wondering how you and Becky addressed the branding issue. Like he said, covering logos with patches is really cool. I'd like to hear more about how that came together with the brands.
Yeah, so when I patch over a logo, I'm patching over the ski school or the chalet company logo that would have been on a jacket. I am always leaving the branded logo on the product. So if it's a North Face jacket, it remains a North Face jacket. So we're not patching over a garment's logo and saying like, this is something we've made. We're still very much acknowledging that this has been made by the brand. But what happens in our community is, because say if we get, and we do get this quite often. So say a lot of the ski schools around here, they will actually use North Face, for example, as their branded ski uniform. And they'll just take whatever color is that season's kit. They don't have enough of an order to get a specific color made up. So they'll use that for 2 seasons. And then after 2 seasons, they'll end up getting another set of colors, because that's all that's available in North Face. So quite often with their part-time instructors coming in and out, they have a lot of gear at the end of 2 years that's in really, really good condition. But what they don't want is they don't want that ski instructor uniform on the mountain with their logo, because they don't want someone who might be a really bad skier representing their brand in that way, or they don't want someone in a bar causing a nuisance in their clothing. So we brand over their logo to ensure that that isn't on display, but we leave the original branding on there. Companies know we're doing it. No one has contacted us to ask about it. Like, I think I think if we were to cover over like a North Face logo and try and say that jacket is our own, that would cause issues. But just because we're keeping the jacket as is, but with a patch over the old branding, it's fine.
I just wanted to, can I just add something as well, Gav? Sorry, is that right? Like I actually had some stuff sent to me from a sourcing agency. So I had to take a different approach. They had some samples. So these are garments that have been used in the development process when they're kind of creating garments for brands. And for whatever, these might be first prototypes, second prototypes. And some of these, were obviously more like third prototypes, maybe sealed samples that did have branding on. And they sent me them because they can't do, the sourcing agency can't do anything with those because they can't sell them. And the brand that has, created the product can't use them because they're not, final products. And they sent them to me and said, if you can use these, you can have them, but you must remove the logos. And some of that's easy, because sometimes it's a label, but sometimes there are certain bits of branding which are really difficult to get. Like you can't get like a heat sealed label off. So I'm that for those garments, I'm either cutting around stuff to take the labels out, or gonna take the kind of the one tree approach and patch over them so that you can't see them. But it's an interesting challenge. But other things that I have made, then I've repurposed, as Gavin said. I don't hide the fact that, oh, this was a Rohan jacket. I'm quite proud that it was a Rohan jacket. It's just, you know, it's now something else. And I just put my label in it alongside it. So
yeah, and like another organisation, the collective called Dirtbags, works with ex-climbing gear, and they do a lot of stuff with Berghaus. So Berghaus gives them a lot of their seconds, and the same thing. Berghaus is actually quite happy for their logo to appear on those products. With this slide here, we've got an organisation called Pre-Love Sports, who they're working in sports gear, so in like running gear, event gear. And what they'll do is they'll heat press a new logo over the race logo, for example. Hang on one second, I'm just gonna. Sorry, just. They'll heat press something over the old logo. So if it's like a logo from a certain race or something, they'll heat press something over it, and then they can get it resold. Because in the, you know, we have a big problem in the sports events industry, like the marathons and the races, is that people get a finisher tee. Like I've got lots of finisher tees. Some of those are completely actually unwearable because they don't really fit me, and the size and stuff just doesn't work out. And they all got the name of an event on and a date. So to resell those and get them reused is often impossible. So what we're doing again there is patching over stuff, and we're actually finding that's quite a good way to get it reused. I hope that answered that question. I don't know if anyone wanted to come back on that one. Sounds all good. And then regenerative, which is what Heather spoke about earlier, is putting our stuff into regenerative projects. A great example of this is Trees Not Tees. So Trees Not Tees is an organisation that is now working with events and marathons to eliminate the tees. So basically, you can opt into buying a tree, like planting a tree rather than taking a tee at an event. And they, at the London Marathon this year, they had 7,000 people opt to plant a tree instead of take a tee. And next year they're starting out in the New York Marathon as well. So they're spreading further afield. So yeah, regenerative ideas like planting trees and protecting moorland. Heather, do you want to tell a little bit about why we do what we do, and maybe add your story and why you've got involved?
Yeah, sure. So obviously there's a huge waste problem in the industry, which we get to see all the time, because we've both worked for companies that change their kits quite often, and you know, we see the amount of stuff that comes through the shop. I think there might be a zero missing off there each year in the UK, as Gav said earlier. Like so many tents are left at festivals, and yeah, I think you've already covered a lot of this, Gav. Like, it's a lot of kit ends up being sent to Ghana, and it's not just the fact that it's kit that's culturally inappropriate, perhaps like ski gear going to an African country with no ski slopes, but it's also really, really poor quality clothing. So we're talking about fast fashion, really, that is just unresellable. And they end up being sent in these massive bundles, and the stall holders buy a bundle, and they're basically taking a gamble on what's going to be in that bundle. And sometimes there'll be gems, there'll be Prada kit, or, you know, Gucci or whatever, but most of the time it's going to be rubbish from fast fashion brands like Shein and H&M and Primark. I don't know if you have those brands in Canada. The upshot of that is that we've got enough clothes on the planet already to dress the next 6 generations. So you know, it makes total sense to us to try and keep those items in action for longer. And in the process, making things more affordable for people, and sort of making those items of clothing available as well, to people who just wouldn't have had a chance otherwise. I think a really good example of that is Michael at Pre-Love Sports. He does rebrand and resell things, but he actually uses the money that he gets from his resales to fund donations that he makes, and he made a donation of sports clothing and sports shoes to a fire station in Moss Side in Manchester, which is a really deprived area of the UK's second largest city. And they'd set up a boxing gym, an after-school boxing gym at this fire station, and the fire, people that work at the fire station were running it. But the kids were turning up from school, just in their school uniform because they didn't have any other gear. And so Michael was able to give them, t-shirts and trainers and shorts and things. And, that's just life-changing for them because, it means they can work out in kit and they're not damaging their school uniform either. So I think it's it sort of strikes me, and I love working for Reaction because we have these monthly calls. We haven't really talked about how we kind of run the collective, but and maybe Core is quite similar, but we run the collective by we have a Discord server, and we have different channels on that Discord, so we can talk about things like repair, events, repurposing, donating, things like that, funding, which is obviously always a big issue. And then we have monthly calls, and on the monthly calls we actually get to speak to each other a bit like we're doing now, but very interactive, and we talk about the wins that we've had, and we share our successes, and we also share our challenges, and we're kind of like a hive brain that helps each other, ask questions and tries to discover what's going on, and then actually try to help each other and put forward solutions and ideas that have maybe worked, that we've seen work elsewhere. So it's just really exciting because actually when this group of people get together, just really cool stuff happens, and you'll find that a little bit later down the line, one of the members is sending kit to one of the other members, and somebody's sending zips somewhere else, and then at one point they're getting together and they're holding a CSR day for a company where they're actually teaching people how to, the importance and how to repair and things like that. We've been doing podcasts together, like being invited onto different podcasts, and I think the fact that we're all working together just really amplifies our impact, and hopefully you found the same with Core as well, or you will find it. But I think that's what's been really exciting about becoming this collective of, I think we're over 40 members now, probably nearing 50. So yeah, just really exciting. Oh, I think you might be on mute, Gav.
Yeah, so I'll echo that. Like when, for me, one of the most important reasons or most joyful reasons of being in this collective is to look at the wins channel on the Discord space. And when you're having a bit of a tough time, like running these organizations can be tricky. Stuff can be difficult. You could have just, like, as I said, been watching a forest fire from your window. But you can go on there and you feel this real sense of community, and you feel like you want to keep going and be involved and engaged. And then, as Heather says, ideas just get shared. Like there's no cost for organizations to be involved in Reaction. We want people just to come into that space and to give what they can give to that space. So to share their ideas, to ask questions to problems that they might have, so that we can all help each other try and grow and progress. And that's the point of the space. It's not there to, for people just to pay into this and think, oh, what can I get? I'm getting a little bit of a promotion because I'm linked to the Reaction Collective. What we want people to come in. We want that to happen, obviously. We want the network to spread and for people to find connections and find services and organizations. But we also want those organizations to come in and sort of give to the collective and help each other. And that really happens. And that has really happened. And it's super exciting. And it's a great thing to be a part of. I think I might have had How next, Heather, which was a Discord channel, sharing stories, supporting each other, and encouraging people to think of themselves as citizens, not consumers, which we will actually come on to later.
Sorry, I jumped the gun, didn't I?
No, that's all right. No, that's fine. Recently, we've all got Yeah, go on. Yeah. So I just introduced recently. We've got together as a collective and started to talk about what we advocate for. So we're hoping in the future, further down the line, when we've grown into bigger collectives, that we might be able to have some influence on government decisions, on branding, on what decisions brands are making, and citizens. So yeah, we've created this advocacy document, which I'll let Heather go through.
Yeah, so we started to, well, we've been applying for funding, and so that's made us kind of formalize, I suppose, some of our thoughts about, where we want to take this and what kind of impact we want to have. And so we started to think about what does the collective as a whole advocate for, and we split that into 3 different areas. And the first one is citizens. And we're very focused on the idea that it's really important for citizens to come together and take collective action. And this is sort of what I was talking about a minute ago, where we've just found like that's where the magic happens. And so we really advocate for people to connect with other people who share the same values or have the same interests. Obviously, the more diverse, the better. We want those people to think about how they do things. So shop with consideration by doing things like buying once, buying well, maintaining their gear, repairing it, but also sharing their gear. And when it comes to sharing, we want to advocate for people to share their knowledge and their skills and their time and their energy. And we'd also advocate for people to connect with nature as well, because we think that that's where people can really be inspired to help protect the planet. They can imagine the future that they want to be part of, or that they want to leave for their children and grandchildren. And also we want them to support regeneration, because we've done a lot of damage to our planet already, and it's not just going to repair itself. So, and then the second strand of what we advocate for is all about government, and it's about legislation, funding, tax, and education. We would advocate for legislating for things like extended producer responsibility, opening up the outdoors, and also the circular economy. And that looks like things like subsidies for repair, subsidies for community hubs, and for circular startups, because we know how hard it is for some of these very small micro businesses to get off the ground. We think that new products should perhaps be taxed more heavily, and also disposal of products should be taxed or more regulated. And we want the government to take responsibility for educating the public about the size of the problem and the solutions available to them. And then the third in our kind of triad of kind of advocacy channels, I suppose, is the brands. And Russell this might speak to you, I think. We want brands to really support people and protect the planet, and that involves making quality items from quality materials and components. Speaking to what Becky said earlier, not over-speccing technical gear that actually doesn't need to be that technical for the majority of people. That actually makes it more repairable generally if it's not over-specced. So making products truly repairable also means doing things like having good seam allowances, making spares available. We would love brands to adopt a decentralized approach to repair. And the reason for that is because we know how important speed of repair is to people who live and work in the outdoors. It's no good for me to send my jacket away for 3 weeks to Amsterdam, which is one of the big repair hubs in Europe, to get it back a month later. I'm going to be cold for a month. So actually getting it repaired locally and empowering local repairers by perhaps providing spares or licensing them in some way to be able to repair items would be really, really cool. We'd love brands to embrace slow fashion. Gav talks about the fact that North Face changes its colours every year. It's totally unnecessary. Maybe necessary from a purely capitalist point of view, but from a practicality point of view, it's really unhelpful. So embrace slow fashion, universal colours, no seasons. and also fair wages and working conditions, obviously, for the people that are making those garments. So that was quite a lot. I'm sorry, but we're quite excited about this and perhaps the ways that it might be able to take us. And we're in this space and we can see these problems and we feel that they're not being properly addressed.
That's so amazing, Heather. This is just Jamie jumping back in. We are at the 8-minute mark. Just wanted to give everybody a warning, and making sure that if people do have questions, that they're getting those raised so that we have time to answer them.
Sure, thank you.
I think what I'd just like to add to that is, so from a government perspective here in France, we're starting to see legislation like the stuff that we described. So there is subsidised repair. There has been subsidised bike servicing as well. There is an extended producer responsibility act that's come in, and there is now funding and investment from off of that is going into circular economic models. So that might sound like what we've written there might sound like quite a strict set of rules in a way, but actually we're saying that we believe brands, governments, and citizens can work together to imagine this future. Like I can start to see glimpses of this in France, and all of those legislation all that legislation that is being brought in is feeding into our community help, and making what we do easier. On the question of repair, we do have people will come into our space and pay to have their garment repaired, even if it is under warranty, because they want it done at speed. We're not like we're going to be nowhere near as professional as Russell's set up, but yeah, they want it done at speed, so we are finding that is a key thing for certain people. And then what we also do is we campaign. So we've sort of touched on and talked about the citizen idea, and we mentioned earlier how we need society to change. Like in the UK, we cannot leave 250,000 tents behind each year at festivals. We do not have enough repurposes and enough ideas and nobody needs enough bags to turn all that tent fabric into stuff. We need people to change the way they're using their stuff and to start looking after it a bit more. So we've been running the Citizen Friday campaign, which I again let Heather explain.
The Citizen Friday campaign started off last year in advance of Black Friday. And the reason that we started it was because we were pretty appalled at some of the outdoor brands that were jumping on the Black Friday bandwagon, promoting overconsumption, when in our view, they should really be promoting access to the outdoors. And but rather than just kind of denounce Black Friday and say, oh, don't shop, we actually had a bit more of a think about it, and we were like, well, what should people do instead? And so we came up with 3 ideas that just happened to rhyme, that are share, repair, and get out in the fresh air. And we promoted that. We talked about it. We shared our ideas of what that might look like, and we basically encouraged people not to shop, but to go and do one of those things on a Friday in the run up to Black Friday. And it really captured people's imaginations, and we were really excited. It was really, really interesting to see people were like, yeah, I get this. Actually, this is better for me. This makes me feel good, and shopping online doesn't make me feel good. So yeah, so people embraced it. And for that reason, we decided to continue doing it. So we actually wish each other a happy Citizen Friday these days. And we kind of talk about what we do each week. That doesn't have to be on a Friday. Usually my citizening is on a Wednesday, because that's when my son has the day off school. We go and do something, and that might be volunteering down at the One Tree shop, or it might be going for a hike or a bike ride or something like that. And actually, yeah, repairing some of our gear. So I mean, it's just a great thing to be part of, and it just means that you're away from your computer screen and you're doing something constructive and exciting.
I love that, Heather. We've got a comment coming in here. So Kevin was hoping, he said, could you share background information offline to support the advocacy for decentralizing repair centers? This would be very valuable to CORE as we develop our rehab initiative.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd love to share more about that.
Great.
Yeah, and I think it on that note, like I know you have a planned tour for next year for 18 venues, 18 towns that you're gonna kind of visit on the tour. I mean, that's really, really exciting. And I think like everything that we've done at Reaction, and I know you've done repair days already, and I've seen them in some of your videos and stuff, but everything that's kind of grown from that through One Tree and through Reaction all started with that one repair day. So it started with something in our community that just triggered an action, and it people came around it. You could see that people in our community wanted to be part of that. They wanted to get involved. I do think these repair days are really, really valuable. Like even if it's just that one day a year in a community, just getting people together and starting to bring people into a space is really important. And in fact, that speaks to the last slide, because this is the last slide, and that is where it started. This was the very first repair day outside the shop. We called it Fix It. That's Gina, an Australian friend of mine, who just turned up. We had wine. I picked lots of zips that day. We had the whole team at the shop on it. But it just speaks to the point that, like, I think what we need to do is just start something, and a repair tour like the one you're planning on doing, which hopefully will then lead on to a community hub, is really just the way to get going. And that's what we're trying to do at Reaction. We're trying to bring as many people into the space and get them to share their ideas, support, and just to help people start stuff up in their own community. Cool.
Thank you so much, Gavin and Heather and Rebecca. That was so interesting and informative. And I know we have only 2 minutes, but I'm just wondering, is there any sort of last lingering questions to ask anyone? If not, Gavin, I'll have you go ahead and we'll get you out of the hot seat. You can unshare your screen and okay. Great. So, well, in that case, then that completes our webinar for this month. The August session will be on the usual date, which is a Thursday at the usual time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and it'll be August 1st. So look for more information on that speaker coming soon. And in the meantime, if you have not yet registered for the annual CORE Summit, it will once again be held at the stunning Kimberly Conference and Athlete Training Center. Early bird pricing is in effect right now. It's $350, and that covers both days. That's Thursday, October 3rd and Friday, October 4th. That includes all of your lectures, workshops, outdoor activities. Yes, there will be outdoor activities this year. And meals, breakfasts and lunches. So I had a chance to talk to Kevin a bit about the schedule for this year. It's going to be incredible. But early bird pricing ends July 31st. So if you haven't registered yet, go ahead to the CORE website and do that. All right, it's a wrap. I'm going to sign off the meeting. Thanks again, everyone, and until next time.